Australia podcast, our international student COVID-19 update series. Hello, David Bongiorno, migration agent extraordinaire.
Afternoon, Grant. How are you, mate?
Pretty well. It looks like everybody in Australia is on the internet watching Netflix at the moment, so we'll have to be very careful about not talking over each other so that we get a really nice audio. So, David, tell us about Easter Sunday. What did you do, and what is your plan today, apart from enlightening every international student on what's going on?
Not only enlightening international students, but those who are interested in coming. I was very good on the Easter eggs, Grant. I did some exercise yesterday, and I'm going to do some exercise again today. Just trying to keep it all together, and no more sugar. I'm being pretty good with the sugar. How about you?
I couldn't resist the discounted hot cross buns today.
I know he's very good. I know he's very good on the sugar. Gil Polglase, he's joining us today. He's very disciplined on the sugar, and we're going to talk. Gil's the CEO of the Lonsdale Institute. It's an institute that's Australia-wide. Melbourne, 2 campuses, Sydney, 1 campus, Melbourne. Gil, thanks for taking time on Monday today. I've got to keep track of the days. Easter Monday. Thanks for coming. Yesterday we talked about the deep pockets that the universities have and what they are and what they will be providing to international students who've lost jobs or had reduced hours and are suffering financially while studying in Australia. With Gil, we look to see what the private sector is doing. Gil, can you hear us now? Oh,
yep,
that's a great
we're back.
line. That's a great line.
Good.
So yesterday, mate, we went around the country. We went Charles Darwin, University of Queensland, University of Sydney, Monash, University of South Australia, looking at what is available for domestic and international students in the university sector. Today, we thought we'd talk to you about what's available in the private sector.
Absolutely. From our point of view, as we were talking just a little earlier, we have shifted our face-to-face delivery to 100% online. And that's with essentially a different timetable, a different approach, given that the face-to-face interaction is just impossible at the minute. So we have 1,600 odd students at the moment undertaking majority of them undertaking their studies online. Some have decided to go home. Some have decided to stay in the country. However, we're delivering as best we can, to those students under quite trying conditions. I think it's worth remembering that none of these qualifications and courses, particularly in English, have been designed for 100% delivery. As a provider of education to overseas students, we're restricted to delivering no more than a third online, with 2/3 face-to-face in every delivery term. However, ASQA has been very, very good in essentially advocating for providers to maximise the support that is on offer to international students at this stage. And that means providing them with whatever mechanisms possible to still deliver their education, albeit from, that is 100% online. In terms of that support as well, from our point of view, and most providers in the market that I'm aware of, all of us have provided fee relief to our students, and that is that there's an acknowledgement, obviously, that many of them have lost their jobs. Those that do have employment, there's a great degree of uncertainty around what is going to occur going forward. We're working with students on a case-by-case basis to provide them with additional fee payment plans, additional timing to pay us. We will accept lower amounts than what they presently have to pay us under the traditional payment plans that we enrolled them in previously. And don't forget that the product the students have purchased, which was the qualification, was a large part of that was the face-to-face delivery, obviously. Now it's through no fault of anyone's at the moment, it's all 100% online. So there's a recognition from us that the product is different, therefore we've provided a discount to every student actually that's studying with us in an online environment for as long as it's going to take. Sorry, you go.
We're talking to Gil Polglase. He's the CEO of a national private college, the Lonsdale Institute, campus in Melbourne, 2 campuses in Sydney. Gil, that's a very benevolent gesture, your fee reduction. Is that something across the board with all the private providers? Are they all providing discounted relief?
I'd say the majority of them would be, for sure. I think it would be difficult for them to retain their numbers of students if they were not adopting that type of a practice, to be honest with you. I can't speak for every single provider clearly, but the ones I've spoken to, the education agents I've spoken with over the past couple of weeks, generally the indications are that most people are providing some sort of relief for international students and really trying to just settle them down. They're very much, as you know, the meat and sandwich here. They don't qualify for any of the allowances and financial initiatives that citizens and permanent residents would. And as the Prime Minister pointed out, recent international students have to show, is it 25,000 Australian dollars for the first 1 year of study to support themselves. But after that, pretty much they're on their own. We know from our students that all of them work, essentially. And at the moment, with reduced employment or no employment, it's exceedingly difficult to maintain their financial obligations, not just to us as an education provider, but also to their landlords, and just generally maintaining their lifestyles.
That now lifestyles maintained, contrary to what a lot of the people who have no knowledge of the sector would believe. A lot of these students struggle to stay here because it's such an expensive experience to study in Australia, don't they? Very true.
Very true. Yeah, and that's where, pretty much when I say all of our students, we're in the vocational sector. We don't, not the higher education sector, and as a result, many of them, I'd say 99%, would all work whilst they're within the country, and certainly many of them would not go for a long period of time without employment. So it's incredibly important for us to support them at this difficult time.
Gil, you mentioned that you have a face-to-face component that is the percentage is legislated. Have you had to get a formal exemption from that, or have you moved to online, just assuming the government will acquiesce to that because of the need at the moment?
Yeah, there's. ASQA, the regulator, has been very good and positive with respect to providing some guidance to regulators around this. So with respect to monitoring students' attendance, not reporting them for not meeting their attendance requirements, etc. Course progress is another issue for international students. So there hasn't been just a blanket exemption. I'd be at pains to point that out. However, the regulator is encouraging us to support overseas students and focus very much on the learning outcomes of the student. So, and that's what we've tried to convey to our teaching staff as well. Albeit, it is challenging to deliver a qualification through Zoom to students, on a mass scale. Yeah.
Sorry, bearing in mind that you have attendance checking responsibilities, and you can't speak for all colleges, obviously, Gil, but what would you be telling any student that's checking us out now or listens in the next few days? How do they need to ensure that the college is aware that they are using the materials or still undertaking learning, which I guess is what they need to do?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I know from our point of view, we're still taking attendance. We're still checking with students to ensure that they are logging into Zoom and actually downloading a recording of any delivery presentation that is provided on a weekly or daily basis. And so from that point of view, we're still maintaining the support with them. Other providers, I would imagine most would be doing the same. I think if providers are not checking in with students, I think that's a massive concern. I think that this is now the time to be supporting these students, not just letting it go as a free-for-all, essentially. So there are mechanisms available through Moodle and through Zoom, any other online platforms that providers might choose to use that are different to those, where you can encourage students to check in, email students, get them to ring. I know some of our trainers have adopted, personal communications with the students through email as well. So I think I just speak from our point of view, Grant, that's very much what we are doing. So we are able to liaise with students, also from the point of view of supporting them emotionally throughout this time. We have a wellness officer that works with us. Students can book in times to speak with her, and we can refer students on where we need to essentially the professionals in under Victorian and New South Wales state governments that are set up to assist international students. Things like welfare issues, mental health as well. We know from surveying our students is a massive issue for them right now, not surprisingly. So I would be encouraging students to check in with their providers if they haven't heard from them or if they don't feel they're getting the support, because I can tell you the regulator has been very good in its communication, and it's all very much on supporting international students at this point, not just simply letting them go and effectively chasing them for fees.
Gil, what are the big challenges moving for you as a provider, but also for the students to adapt from 1/3 online to 100% online from your perspective? And what's the feedback from students? Are they struggling with the change, or because they're young and IT savvy, they're adapting with no issues?
I think some will definitely adapt to the change. It will also depend on what you're learning. I'm no teacher, but I know from talking to our teaching staff, I think delivering ELICOS, English language studies, through the internet, through Zoom, is incredibly challenging, versus say a qualification that might go for 6 or 12 months, where the level of attendance and intensity might not be as great as what it is for ELICOS, for instance. We certainly have had some students that have had some difficulties in the first week adapting to this, as we all have. I can't imagine there'd be too many providers out there who tell you it's all gone swimmingly for the first week or two. There are challenges faced with how you adapt, how you can use technology to provide instruction in these qualifications and courses that was just not there for a lot of providers 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. We've had to adapt very, very quickly in order to ensure we are supporting students while still maintaining social distancing compliance measures.
Fairfax talked yesterday, Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, about new online courses to help with financial solvency for universities and private sectors. These courses, they're all online, 100% online. Are they new courses, or are they courses that have already been approved, endorsed, and been adapted for online?
I think there are going to be 2 new qualifications established. And this is only just been announced. There's not a great deal of information that I've been able to find about it. I think there'll be 2 new qualifications that will almost be a hybrid between the higher ed and vocational sectors that will focus on reskilling people for specific areas: allied health, nursing, teaching. Mathematics was in there as well. They're graduate certificate type programs, I believe, that the vocation sector will be able to offer. Obviously, universities running vocational sectors will offer those. Groups like us presumably will be as well. I believe they'll be more focused for the domestic market rather than the international market. I know the government's aiming to launch these by May. There's not a great deal of information. For instance, at the moment on the ASCL website, there's not a great deal of information on this at all. In fact, there's none. Just checking prior to coming on with you guys today. So I would imagine in the coming days, there's going to be more detail provided around what these are. There's also going to be additional, there will be fee relief provided to providers as well from the regulatory point of view. So certain fees associated with regulatory activity will be refunded, I'm under the understanding of. And as well, those students that have loans to study for higher education will have some of the providers will have some of the fees associated with maintaining those loans waived and refunded.
Courses, 2 brand new courses by May online. Are there any qualitative issues in such rapid course creations? A course takes a long time to create, doesn't it?
I'd imagine there'd be significant qualitative issues, and particularly those associated with 100% online delivery. So again, I'm not entirely sure how all that's going to be worked through and established. But I believe the focus of the government's going to be on reskilling, retraining, upskilling people, as many people as possible straight away. I think they're talking about 20,000 people initially coming into these types of programs. We know from our point of view, we are 99% of our revenues from overseas students, but this will be an opportunity for providers like us to also enter the domestic market as well.
Is that a common mix with private providers to have such a high portion of international students?
I think for us, not ever having any government funding registration available for for domestic students, I'm not sure how many providers. Perhaps we're an anomaly the last few years. Many providers would have had a national students as well as international students. I would imagine, though, they'd probably have more international students than they would domestic. And I would imagine that would have swelled probably under the vet fee help programs in the past few years that have since been tightened up and abolished, actually.
People who are listening, give them an idea of before Corona, where people were coming from. Where do the vocational sector international students typically come from? The big areas.
Yeah, sure. So you've got the more populous regions of China, clearly, and then the entire subcontinent. From our point of view, we have placed very heavy marketing emphasis on countries within Europe, Greece, France, Italy, Spain, to name a few, and more recently Mexico, and then down in South America, Brazil, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and then across on the Asian side, Japan and Korea are probably the primary markets for us. And we've made those, we've chosen those markets very selectively, with a view to ensuring that if a student does apply for a visa to study, an overseas student visa to study with us, then they have a very high probability of obtaining a visa based on their selection with us. So we're not about the numbers game, essentially, that perhaps some providers are.
A lot of people don't understand it's actually quite difficult to get a student visa to this country from those areas, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely it is. But it does work very, very. It works very, very closely with the actual provider itself. We, as of this month, we heard a confirmation from our friends at Department of Home Affairs that we're an assessment level 1 provider now, which means that the number of it means the number of visa refusals we have been exceedingly low. And our evidence rating is below 1, which means, in a nutshell, that the financial requirement for students coming in and applying for a student visa based on on an enrolment with Lonsdale Institute means that those financial requirements will not be as stringently looked at as what they would be for a provider that is anywhere from a 2 to a 3 in terms of assessment level.
That would put you in the same level with the group of 8 universities, would it not?
It has, yes.
Excellent.
It has.
Excellent.
Yes. Yeah, so from our point of view, that just means we don't then pivot and chase those massive markets. We just stay within the same markets. We work with our same agents and partners, the same student profile, we're bringing them in, and ensuring, and where we can, that those GTE requirements, are genuine temporary requirements, are met by everyone that we put forward.
How is this? I mean, it's early days yet, and we don't know when international students will be allowed to return to Australia to study. How has this changed your future marketing goals?
It's substantially changed them. The impact of the borders being closed means that our offshore market's completely, I won't say dead, it's paused until such time as the borders are open, which means we now, along with every other provider in the country, are focused on the onshore students, of which there's anywhere from 550 to 570,000 across all sectors: secondary, cost, and higher ed. So have students coming in, these are going to be under pressure.
Oh, we've lost you, Gil. You there?
Revenue's under pressure.
Great.
Everything is essentially under pressure from. Oh, can you hear me?
Sorry, I just lost you for a second.
Yep, you're there. Can you go over those numbers again, Gil?
Yeah, sure. I believe there's anywhere from 550 to 570,000 overseas students in the country right now. Those numbers are spread across secondary education, vocational, ELICOS, and also higher education. So without having the supply of new students coming into the country, providers are going to be essentially working, adjusting their marketing and sales strategy to focus on the students that are onshore, keeping those students in class, keeping them supported all the way through. But it's critical, as you both know, that we get the borders open once it's deemed safe, and we get students coming back into the country. Because the flow-on effects for the economy, not just as a provider like us in our market, are in the billions of dollars a year.
Gil,
so
sorry, Gil. Just taking that point up a little bit, and this is really the main question that I've got about this whole issue. Is the international market going to bounce back if the government doesn't step up now and do more to support those students who are here? And with the cost of the airfares, they're stranded here now.
Yeah, they are. Grant, I think the market will bounce back. The question is, in what period of time will it bounce back? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? What is the is there any ill feeling toward a lack of support for international students? As we know at the moment, if you've been here for longer than 12 months, you can access your superannuation, which is something. But in terms of what other assistance is being provided to overseas students, given that they're so important to our economy, I'm not sure the fallout there. I think it's still way too early for the government to address that, albeit it is incredibly important for them to do so. I think right now the focus is on shoring up the support to a national workforce, domestic students, ensuring that our citizens are taken care of. But I know that groups behind the scenes, ITECA in particular, and other groups are doing their best to lobby the federal government, put forward initiatives and measures with a view to ensuring there is support, more of a financial support to students, because as you say, they're effectively trapped here. They may not have employment. Any source of money coming their way would be from probably their parents sending that to them. The superannuation is where it can be accessed, but to what is that worth to a student? I mean, if they've been here 1 year, they're not going to have a lot of super to draw on. No, they won't. The only, I think what will happen, those that do choose to stay, I think we get to a situation where, depending on how, the success of flattening the curve being maintained going forward, various sectors of the economy will be allowed. I think social isolation will be eased, and let's say you might have a situation where possibly you get some more hospitality and retail venues being given the green light to open, which would mean then that potentially there could be additional jobs available. So you're getting overseas students moving into those markets as well from an employment point of view. I think that's something that's going to be very important to support them as well, because as we know, many of them are working in hospitality, retail, cleaning. We know in Sydney and also in Melbourne, there's a lot of them working in construction as well. And obviously construction's been deemed an essential services, so there's still work going for anybody in the construction industry.
Gil, you've articulated the cause and explained everything in a fantastic, clear, concise fashion. I suppose one of the things that concerns me is, do you think those students who are in a position to stay on and do further study, as opposed to applying for a tourist visa to stay here because they can't go home, they have the funds, do you think the genuine temporary entrant criteria will become an issue, or do you think the government in this circumstance will relax it? I don't know. I think they'll probably keep it business as usual, but that means people studying, people who want to study could potentially miss out on courses you offer or other private providers offer.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm not sure. I'd imagine the requirements for GT would remain the same.
I think so. Yeah.
And I think that with respect to the costs associated with the visas, the processing times, all the rest of it, there's possibly be some movement there. But to what extent that helps retain students on shore, support them, I'm just not sure. So, but all I know is that from our point of view, we still definitely want all the students still here. Many of them want to be here. And I can tell you anecdotally as well, we've heard from more than one of our agents now, there is still inquiries coming from offshore about coming to Australia to study in September. Now, why September is the magical month, no one knows. It's just, I think students, prospective students saying, well, if it's open in September, it's prior to Christmas, we'd very much want to still come out and get started, which is good. So I do think there'll be some bounce back. I don't think the borders will open. I think the borders will remain closed after other sectors in the economy have been allowed to resume work. That's what I think. So I think it will take some time for the offshore market to bounce back.
Is Australia's lost Canada's gain? I mean, are any of the other English-speaking jurisdictions offering ease of entry to international students? Or, I mean, New Zealand's closed shut, Australia's closed shut. What's the story with Canada? Do you know? I
don't know, but I do think that unless we act quickly and decisively, that's definitely going to be a risk for us. I think long term though, I don't think there'll be any significant damage to the industry. I think Australia's still a very good destination for overseas students. I think the education standard's very, very high. As we talked about earlier, and you said the standard of living is very, very high in this country, yet there is a good lifestyle to be had here, and it's one of the draw cards and the attractions to coming to Australia to study. I think what I would like to see would be at some point in the coming weeks a position from the government with respect to how they're going to, say, work with Austrade and how they're going to work with the smaller independent bodies in the country to send a message to the overseas student market. We still want you. Times are a bit bleak right now, but very much we do want to get back to an open for business position at some point in the next 6 to 12 months, and start the positive messaging going out.
How long do you think it'll take once the borders are open to get back to levels we had pre-corona?
6 months, I would have thought. 6 months. Possibly some people are less optimistic, than me. It'll be also interesting just to watch the Australian dollar as well. In all of this, and also the onshore job market as well. Whilst I don't think students ever had I think, it's best way of saying this, I think not being able to find employment was not really an issue for them previously. Come to Australia, there's always going to be a job available for you. And we know that from our students. We've seen that, and it's not too long before they can pick up work. So it's a question of how quickly will our economy get back to being in a position to support job seekers at that level, looking for employment. That could be 6 to 9 months, But I do think once you get that sorted out, the borders are then open again. I do think you'll still see students wanting to get out and travel.
It's good to hear, Gil. Go have the rest of the afternoon with the family. Thanks for coming on, taking time out.
Thanks for having me. Grant. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Gil. Returning again to the spotlight on Migrating to Australia podcast.
One of our favourite guests.
I love being on, boys. So anytime. Do another one in a few months. See where we are.
Absolutely.
Well, you are officially our favourite guest because you're the only one who's been on twice.
I'm the only guest. The only one on twice. Fantastic. Thanks, Grant.
All right. Well, thanks. We did have some people who were checking us out. We did get a comment saying that it was helpful. So that's what we're always aiming for.
Good. Fantastic.
Thanks, Gil. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Dave.
And thanks, everyone, for paying attention.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.